So having a comic book related YouTube channel has been an interesting experience, particularly being that I'm not the typical collector that you see, on top of being a female in a mostly male-dominated space. I'm also quite a bit younger than some of the other collectors out there. A lot of the viewer base is typically above 35 males, and so I do not fit into that demographic, and I've definitely, I think, had a bit of an interesting or different experience than maybe some other people have, for better or for worse sometimes, and I like to look at it in a positive way. But something that I get in the comments all the time is how people think it's really cool to see a woman that's so passionate about comic books. And of course, I'm always flattered to be welcomed to the community, but also there's a part of me that for a while kind of wondered, like, why is it such a big deal to be a woman in this space? And for a little while, it kind of had me thinking a little bit and wondering if, is that the reason that people care to watch me? Is it about what I'm saying, or is it about who I am and my appearance? When I first started my Instagram, where I was sharing comics, I actually for a while didn't want to show my face, and it's because I wanted to build a following that wasn't based around who I was and what I looked like. And now that I have become more comfortable with the community and more confident in myself and ready to put myself out there, I want my personality to be a part of my collection, because my collecting is so heavily tied to me as a person. I think it's interesting that there are so few of us women who are open in the comic space. I think anybody who collects, who's been to a convention, will know that you're going to be seeing mostly guys, but there is a mix of people. I do see women flipping through the long boxes and collecting, but a lot of them aren't necessarily as outspoken about it when they do, and it's kind of dawned on me a little bit that outside of maybe a few other people, I am probably one of the most known females in sort of the comic book YouTube space. Even at the small size that I am, the community is just so niche that seeing me just doing my thing, being me, not necessarily drawing too much attention to it, I think that resonates with people. At first, I was a little bit concerned that, that would be all people would care about from me, is who I am, not what I'm showing or what I'm talking about, but I've come to embrace the fact that me just being here doing what I'm doing is important to a lot of people, because at the end of the day, however you like to spin it, representation matters. And when you don't see people like me involving themselves in the hobby and being outspoken about it, then it gives the perception that it's not inclusive to those types of people. And I've just come to sort of accept and understand that what I'm doing is valuable to some people. A lot of people are conditioned at a young age to kind of lean towards certain interests based on who they are, and I was not necessarily raised like that. So something that sticks out in my memory is my husband told me about a time he was at a store, and there was a little girl and her dad, and she wanted a Spider-Man backpack. And the dad told her, no, Spider-Man's for boys. And my husband was telling me that he felt really bad that he didn't stop and say something, because that is how we continue the cycle. That's why women are not into comic books more, because they're conditioned at such a young age to believe that they're not welcome in that space. And that's kind of how I was pushed, sort of by the culture, not necessarily by my family. My family was always very pro comic book, very open to whatever weird interest I had growing up. So I never felt like weird about anything like that at home. It was more just kind of culture in general, sort of the attitude in some of the comic shops, and maybe some of the attitudes from other kids my age. I was just never really welcomed among, other people that were talking about sort of nerdy stuff. I was kind of pushed to the side and told, like, no, you're a girl, you can't talk about that. And there's just a lot, I think, that happens when we're younger that kind of pushes us in a certain direction when we get older. You'll notice with women, a lot of their hobbies and interests tend to be a little bit more vanity-based, more like makeup and hair and fashion. And I think that a lot of that comes from, again, like I said before, conditioning at a young age. Women are kind of conditioned to be more proper, sort of prettier, and are expected to put more effort into their physical appearance. And it becomes a lot of women comparing themselves to each other, and eventually women hating other women. And I will say that, as a kid, there were definitely some boys that were kind of like weird about having a girl into more nerdy stuff. But really, a lot of the negativity and rudeness that I dealt with in my life has been from other women, and particularly other women judging me for kind of having these nerdier hobbies, these more male-oriented hobbies, and a lot of them will kind of look at people like me and kind of assume that it's being done for attention, some sort of sexual gratification out of being not like the other girls. But, like, I've never said that I'm not like other girls. It's other girls telling me I'm not like them. And I think that's really what it comes down to. And a lot of it is just social conditioning, women being conditioned to kind of hate other women, and just people in general sort of pushing back on those on the outside that don't fit the cultural norm. And I've just never been that kind of person. I've always just embraced everything that's made me who I am. And that includes comic books, heavy metal music, video games, all things that are predominantly male interests, but there's nothing physically about me that's stopping me from enjoying that stuff, So something's up, and I think it's a lot more of a social stigma than just necessarily, oh, boys like action and girls like dolls, I think it's a lot more complicated. Many years of social conditioning has kind of brought us to the point that we're at. And I think maybe if some women picked up some fun hobbies, maybe they'd stop hating on other women for doing something they like. Thank you for watching. Peace out.